I'm Jesse, 32 male. I live in a small two-bedroom house on a quiet suburban street where the biggest event of the week is usually just the coordinated rollout of recycling bins on a Tuesday night. I work as a data analyst, which is a polite way of saying I spend 8 hours a day staring at spreadsheets, trying to find the story hidden within the numbers. It's quiet, methodical work, and it suits me. My life, much like my job, has always been about order and predictable outcomes. That is, until my own brother-in-law took a wrench to my future, not out of rage or passion, but out of the quiet, corrosive acid of jealousy. This is the story of how a single act of sabotage, meant to keep me down, ended up propelling me to a life I had only dreamed of, and how a tiny, unblinking camera lens brought a dark family secret into the light. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The email arrived on a Tuesday, ironically right after I'd rolled my recycling bin back to the side of the house. The subject line was simple, professional, and yet it made my heart kick against my ribs like a trapped bird. Final round interview invitation, senior data strategist at Veridian Dynamics. This was it. This wasn't just a job, it was the job. Veridian was the undisputed leader in the tech sector, the kind of company people in my field talked about with a certain reverence. The senior data strategist role was a quantum leap from my current position. It meant a 60% salary increase, a corner office, and most importantly, the chance to work on projects that could actually shape the future of predictive analytics. I had spent the last 5 years of my life working towards a chance like this, sacrificing weekends for online certifications and evenings for personal projects to build my portfolio. I read the email 3 times just to be sure it was real. The final interview was scheduled for the following Monday at 10:00 a.m. sharp. It would be an in-person panel with 3 department heads, including the legendary Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose papers I had studied in college. The pressure was immense, but so was the exhilaration. I immediately called the one person I knew would understand the magnitude of this moment, my twin sister, Olivia. We'd been inseparable since birth, a two-person team against the world. She was a librarian, a profession as gentle and thoughtful as she was, and she was my biggest cheerleader. "Liv, you are not going to believe this," I said, pacing my small kitchen. "Let me guess, you finally figured out how to fold a fitted sheet," she joked. "Better, I got the final interview at Veridian's." A shriek erupted from the other end of the line, so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "No, Jesse, that's incredible. I knew you could do it." Her happiness was so pure, so genuine, it was like a shot of adrenaline. We talked for 20 minutes about the possibilities, about what this could mean for my future. Towards the end of the call, I heard a voice in the background. It was her husband, Ethan. "What's all the screaming about?" he grumbled. "Jesse got the final interview at Veridian," Olivia announced to him. There was a pause, and then I heard Ethan's voice, closer now, presumably on speakerphone. "Oh wow, Veridian, big shot. Well, congrats, man." His tone had a strange flatness to it, a hollow echo where enthusiasm should have been. I'd grown used to it over the years. Ethan was a mechanic who owned his own small garage. He was good with his hands, a master of engines and transmissions, but he held a thinly veiled disdain for my line of work. He called it a fake job where I just played with numbers on a screen. Our relationship was a constant low-level hum of polite friction. I was the college boy and he was the real working man. It was a tired cliché, but one he clung to with a strange pride. I brushed it off, as I always did, choosing to focus on Olivia's joy. The next 5 days were a blur of intense preparation. I spent every waking moment living and breathing Veridian Dynamics. I wasn't just preparing for an interview, I was preparing for battle. I researched the 3 panelists, reading their publications and watching old conference keynotes on YouTube. I dived deep into Veridian's latest quarterly reports, analyzing their market position and identifying potential areas for growth where my skills could be invaluable. I built a mock presentation on a dataset I found online, showcasing exactly how I would approach one of their publicly known challenges. I practiced my answers to common questions in front of a mirror until they sounded confident but not rehearsed. My suit, a sharp navy blue one I'd bought for special occasions, was picked up from the dry cleaners. My shoes were polished to a roar shine. My portfolio was printed on high-quality paper and placed in a leather-bound folder. No detail was too small. The night before the interview, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've done everything in your power to prepare. I laid out my suit, my shirt, my tie. I set 3 different alarms, one on my phone, one on my Alexa, and one on an old digital clock just in case. I did a final check on my car, a trusty 10-year-old sedan. It wasn't flashy, but it was reliable. I checked the tire pressure, the oil, the coolant. Everything was perfect. My drive to Veridian's downtown office would take about 40 minutes in morning traffic, so I planned to leave at 8:30 a.m., giving me a full hour of buffer time. Around 9 p.m., I got a text from Olivia. Thinking of you, you're going to be amazing tomorrow. Knock em dead red. I smiled, her faith in me a warm comfort. I texted back, thanks Liv, means the world to me. I didn't get a text from Ethan. I didn't expect one. I fell asleep that night dreaming of data streams and corner offices. The golden opportunity shimmering just beyond the horizon, so close I could almost taste it. My first alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. I was already awake. I'd been lying in bed since 6:00, my mind racing with a mix of nerves and excitement. I silenced the alarm and swung my legs out of bed, feeling a surge of energy. This was the day. I went through my morning routine with military precision, a quick shower, a careful shave. I made a simple breakfast of toast and a banana, not wanting anything too heavy to sit in my stomach. As I drank my coffee, I reviewed my notes one last time, cementing the key points of my presentation in my mind. By 7:45 a.m., I was dressed in my navy suit. I looked at myself in the mirror. The man looking back at me was a professional. He was prepared. He was ready. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and grabbed my portfolio and car keys from the kitchen counter. It was 8:25 a.m., 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Perfect. I walked out my front door into the cool, crisp morning air. A few of my neighbors were already heading off to work, a familiar rhythm to the suburban morning. I gave a wave to my neighbor from across the street and walked down my driveway to my car. I clicked the remote to unlock the doors, slid into the driver's seat, and placed my portfolio carefully on the passenger side. I put the key in the ignition, a small, familiar ritual I'd performed thousands of times. I turned the key. Instead of the reliable, healthy roar of the engine catching, there was a pathetic, sputtering whir. A sickly, grinding sound that went on for a few seconds before dying with a final, defeated click. My blood ran cold. No, 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 I muttered, my voice barely a whisper. This couldn't be happening, not today. I took a deep breath, telling myself it was a fluke. Maybe I hadn't turned the key properly. I tried again, the same result. A desperate whining noise from the starter motor, but the engine itself was completely dead. Panic began to bubble in my chest, hot and sharp. I tried a third time, a fourth, pumping the gas pedal uselessly as if my sheer force of will could bring the machine to life. Nothing. I got out of the car and popped the hood, staring at the complex maze of wires and metal. I'm a data analyst. I can build a predictive model from scratch, but I can't tell a spark plug from a piston. To my untrained eye, everything looked fine. There were no obvious leaks, no smoke, nothing disconnected. It just wouldn't start. It was 8:35 a.m. My 1-hour buffer was already shrinking. My mind raced, frantically cycling through options. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking slightly. I opened a rideshare app. The closest car was 15 minutes away, and the estimated arrival time downtown with morning traffic was 9:55 a.m., too close for comfort. I tried to book it, but the app glitched. I tried again. An error has occurred. I switched to another app. Surge pricing was in effect. A 40-minute ride was going to cost me nearly $100, and the ETA was even worse, 10:05 a.m. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I called the top-rated local taxi service. An automated voice informed me that my estimated wait time was between 20 and 30 minutes. It was 8:45 a.m. It was all slipping away. My perfect plan, my meticulous preparation, was being undone by a hunk of dead metal in my driveway. In a final, desperate move, I called the HR contact at Veridian, a woman named Ms. Albright. My voice was tight, strained, as I tried to explain the situation calmly and professionally. Ms. Albright, this is Jesse Miller. I have a 10:00 a.m. interview with the panel. I am so incredibly sorry, but I'm experiencing some unexpected and severe car trouble. Her voice was polite, but there was an unmistakable chill in her tone. I see. Well, Mr. Miller, as I'm sure you can appreciate, the directo. Our rests have a very condensed and back-to-back schedule this morning. We really can't accommodate any delays. I understand completely, I pleaded, the desperation leaking into my voice. I am trying everything I can to get there. Is there any chance, any possibility at all, of pushing it back by even 30 minutes? There was a pause. Let me see, she said. I heard the faint clicking of a keyboard. My hope flickered for a second. I'm sorry, she came back, her voice final. Their next meeting is at 11:00 a.m. sharp. We won't be able to fit you in. The words hit me like a physical blow. I understand, I said, my voice hollow. Thank you for your time. I hung up the phone. It was over, all of it. The months of applications, the weeks of preparation, the dream of a new life, all gone. I leaned against the cool metal of my car door, my perfectly tailored suit feeling like a cruel joke. I felt utterly and completely defeated. After a few minutes of just standing there in a daze, I went through the motions. I called a roadside assistance service to arrange a tow. They said they could be there in an hour. Then, almost as an afterthought, I called the one person I knew who could diagnose the problem in an instant. I called Ethan. He answered on the third ring, the sound of power tools whining in the background of his shop. Hello. Ethan, it's Jesse. I've got a huge problem. My car is dead. It won't start and I just missed a really important interview. Oh man, that's rough, he said. His sympathy sounded rehearsed, distant. What's it doing? I described the pathetic sputtering sound, the dead click. He made a few thoughtful humming noises. Could be anything, buddy. Fuel pump, starter, alternator. Hard to say without looking at it. I've got a tow truck coming, I said. Can they drop it at your shop? Yeah, sure, no problem, he said, his voice casual, almost breezy. I'm swamped today, but I'll try to take a look at it this afternoon if I get a chance. He didn't ask which interview I missed. He didn't seem to care. There was no urgency in his voice, no real concern, just a detached promise to maybe get around to it later. I hung up the phone with a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach that had nothing to do with the missed interview. It was a feeling of profound unease, a tiny, dissonant note in the symphony of my catastrophic morning. The rest of the day passed in a gray, miserable fog. The tow truck arrived, a lumbering beast that hoisted my useless sedan onto its flatbed with an air of mechanical indifference. I watched it drive away, carrying the symbol of my failed ambitions. I went back inside, took off the suit, and hung it back in the closet. It felt like I was putting away a costume from a play that had been canceled on opening night. I spent the next few hours sitting on my couch, staring at the blank screen of my television. The disappointment was a physical weight pressing down on my chest and making it hard to breathe. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the Viridian Dynamics logo. I imagined the panelists sitting in that conference room, looking at the empty chair where I was supposed to be, and then moving on to the next candidate without a second thought. I was just a name on a schedule, a minor disruption that had already been forgotten. Around 2:00 p.m. my phone rang. It was a mechanic from Citywide Auto, the garage I'd told the tow truck driver to take my car to. I had decided against sending it to Ethan's on a gut feeling. His shop was across town and Citywide was only a few miles away. I wanted answers sooner rather than later. Mr. Miller, a gruff voice asked. Well, this is he. Yeah, this is Dave from Citywide. We've got your car up on the lift. I've got to be honest with you, this is one of the weirdest things I've seen in a while. What is it? I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. Is it the fuel pump? Well, it's your fuel system, that's for sure, but it's not a faulty pump, he said, a note of confusion in his voice. Sir, your fuel line has been cut. It's a clean slice right near the connection to the engine. This wasn't a rupture from wear and tear, and it wasn't chewed through by a rodent. Someone took a pair of snips or a blade to this thing, and on top of that, your crankshaft position sensor was unplugged. It was just dangling there. The engine wouldn't get a fuel supply, and the computer wouldn't get a signal to fire the spark plugs. This wasn't a breakdown, Mr. Miller. Your car was deliberately disabled. The phone felt slick in my hand. I sank back into the couch cushions, the air leaving my lungs in a sudden whoosh. Sabotage, the word echoed in the silent room. It was such an ugly, deliberate word, it made no sense. Why would anyone do this to me? I didn't have any enemies. I was a data analyst who lived a quiet life. I thought about random acts of vandalism, maybe some teenagers causing trouble, but it seemed too specific, too tar. Get it? A cut fuel line and a disconnected sensor. It was the work of someone who knew exactly what they were doing, someone who knew how to make a car appear broken without causing permanent, expensive damage. Someone like a mechanic. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and anger. I thanked Dave for the information and told him to go ahead with the repairs. After I hung up, I just sat there trying to process the impossible. Who and why? Then my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen. It was from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the name from the preview, Arthur Vance. He was my neighbor, an elderly man who lived in the house to my left. He was a widower, a retired security systems installer who mostly kept to himself. The message read, Jesse, Arthur Vance here from next door. Saw the tow truck this morning and figured you had car trouble. Sorry to hear it. I was just reviewing my front door security footage because I thought someone let their dog on my lawn last night. Anyway, I saw something you might want to see. It's a bit strange. Let me know when you have a moment. My heart started to pound, a slow, heavy drumbeat in my chest. I texted him back immediately, Arthur, I can be over in 2 minutes. I walked over to his house, my mind racing. Arthur's home was immaculate, the inside as neat and orderly as his perfectly manicured lawn. He led me to a small office where a large computer monitor sat on a tidy desk. Have a seat, son, he said, his voice kind. Like I said in the text, I was looking for a dog, but I found this instead. He clicked his mouse a few times, pulling up a video file. My camera covers my whole front yard and most of your driveway, motion activated. It picked this up early this morning. He hit play. The video was black and white, illuminated by the ghostly infrared light of the camera. The timestamp in the corner read 5:14 a.m. The street was dark and silent. Then a figure walked into the frame from the right, coming down the sidewalk. The person was wearing dark pants and a hoodie, the hood pulled up to obscure their face. They walked directly up my driveway and approached the front of my sedan. The figure crouched down, their body blocking the camera's view of what they were doing to the front of the car. They were there for maybe 45 seconds. Then they stood up, wiped their hands on their pants, and gave a quick, furtive look up and down the street. For a split second, as they turned to walk away, their head angled just right, and my motion-activated porch light flickered on, catching their profile in a pool of yellow light. The breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a random teenager. The set of the jaw, the shape of the nose, the way he held his shoulders, it was all horribly, sickeningly familiar. It was my brother-in-law, Ethan's. Arthur paused the video, the image of Ethan's profile frozen on the screen. The camera, that small, unblinking electronic eye, had seen everything. It had captured the quiet, methodical betrayal that had taken place while I was asleep, dreaming of my golden opportunity. Arthur looked over at me, his expression grim. "I thought you should see it," he said softly. "That man looks a lot like the fellow who came over for your barbecue last month." I could only nod, a cold, hard rage beginning to build in my gut, replacing the shock and disappointment with something far more dangerous. Arthur, seeing the look on my face, quietly saved the video file onto a flash drive he pulled from a desk drawer. "Here," he said, pressing it into my hand. "You'll need this, and I'll keep the original file safe on my hard drive. It's not going anywhere." I thanked him, my voice sounding distant and unfamiliar to my own ears. I walked back to my house in a daze, the small flash drive feeling as heavy as a block of lead in my pocket. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, my mind replaying the frozen image of Ethan's face on the screen. The evidence was absolute, undeniable. The question was no longer who but why. Why would he do this? Why would he betray not just me but his wife, my own sister? My first instinct was to drive over to his garage and confront him, to show him the video and watch his face crumble. But I held back. A fiery, explosive confrontation would be satisfying for a moment, but it wouldn't fix what he had broken. It wouldn't get me my interview back, and it wouldn't answer the fundamental question that was now gnawing at me. Anger without understanding was just noise. I needed to understand the motive. I needed to see the whole picture before I made a single move. So I began to investigate. I became a data analyst of my own life, sifting through the years of memories and interactions, looking for the hidden pattern. I sat at my kitchen table and made copies of the video file onto my laptop in a cloud drive. With the evidence secure, I opened a blank document. And he started to type, listing every memory I had of Ethan being anything less than supportive. At first, it was just small things, little sarcastic jabs I had dismissed at the time as his brand of humor. I remembered a Christmas dinner 2 years ago when I announced I had completed a difficult certification in machine learning. Olivia was ecstatic. Ethan had raised his beer bottle and said, "Cheers to Jesse, soon to be replaced by the robots he's building." Everyone laughed, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Then there was the time I got a small promotion at work. It came with a minor pay bump, but I was proud of the recognition. At a family barbecue, Ethan had clapped me on the back a little too hard and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Look at Mr. Big Shot, moving on up in the world of spreadsheets." But he got it 'cause the boss liked the color of his tie. I'd felt a prickle of annoyance, but Olivia had just rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, be nice, Ethan." I let it go for her sake. I saw the pattern now. Every small success I had was met not with celebration, but with a subtle, cutting remark designed to diminish it, to frame my white-collar world as somehow less real, less earned than his blue-collar one. He wasn't just joking, he was competing. The most damning memory was from a dinner about 2 months ago. I was talking excitedly about the tech industry, mentioning that I was starting to look for new opportunities and that a company like Veridian Dynamics would be a dream come true. I talked about the potential salary, the challenging work, the chance to finally buy a house in a better neighborhood. I remember the look on Ethan's face as I spoke. It wasn't the bored indifference I was used to. It was a tight, strained expression. His jaw was clenched and a muscle ticked beneath his skin. It was the unmistakable look of resentment. To confirm my suspicions, I needed more current data. I called Olivia the next day, keeping my voice as casual as possible. I didn't mention the car, the video, or the sabotage. I just asked how she was doing. After a few minutes of small talk, I gently steered the conversation. "How's Ethan doing?" I asked. "He seemed a bit stressed last time I saw him." Olivia sighed, a weary sound that told me I had hit a nerve. "Oh, you know Ethan," she said, her voice dropping. He's just under a lot of pressure. Business at the garage has been really slow. That new Midas that opened up a few blocks away is killing him. They can do oil changes and tire rotations for half of what he needs to charge just to keep the lights on. She paused. He's been in a foul mood for months. He came home the other night ranting about how unfair it is. How guys like you have it so easy with your guaranteed salaries and your benefits, while he has to bleed just to make a living. Her words were the final piece of the puzzle. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't about a personal hatred of me, it was about his own failure. My potential success at Viridian wasn't a happy event for our family. To him, it was a giant flashing billboard advertising his own struggles. He wasn't just jealous of my achievement, he was terrified by it. My moving up would, in his twisted view, be the ultimate confirmation of his own stagnation. So he did the only thing a man like him could think of. He couldn't build himself up, so he decided to tear me down. He didn't just want to stop me from getting the job, he wanted to prove that my world was just as fragile as his. One cut wire, one disconnected sensor, and the college boy was just as helpless as anyone else. It was petty, it was pathetic, and it was evil. The knowledge settled in my stomach, cold and hard. My investigation was over. It was time to start planning. The rage I felt was a cold, clean fire. It burned away the last of my grief and disappointment, leaving behind a diamond-hard resolve. My objective shifted. It was no longer about simple confrontation. That was too easy, too quick. Ethan had tried to sabotage my future using his skills as a mechanic. I would use mine as a data analyst to orchestrate his downfall. I would build a case, set a trap, and execute a plan with the same precision I used to build a predictive model. His revenge was a crude, blunt instrument. Mine would be a scalpel. My plan had 4 distinct phases. Phase 1, verifying the opportunity. The first thing I did was draft an email to Ms. Albright, the HR contact at Viridian Dynamics. I spent 3 hours writing and rewriting it, ensuring the tone was perfect, professional, sincere, and utterly compelling. I explained that I was writing to follow up on my missed interview. I stated without emotion or embellishment that my transportation failure was not an accident. I told her I had since learned it was a deliberate act of sabotage and that I had irrefutable proof, including a signed statement from a certified mechanic detailing the specific non-seasonal damages. I attached a PDF of the mechanic's report from Citywide Auto. I did not mention it was a family member, and I did not include the video. That was my trump card to be played later. I concluded the email by humbly requesting that if any other positions were to open up in the future, they might keep me in mind. I apologized again for the inconvenience and reiterated my profound interest in the company. I hit send, my heart pounding. This was a long shot, but it was the only shot I had at reclaiming what was stolen. Phase 2, securing the leverage. While I waited for a response, I moved on to the next part of my plan. I knew from Olivia that Ethan was desperate for cash. I would use his greed against him. I called my friend Mark, a successful architect who drove a 3-year-old Audi A6. Mark was a car guy, and he'd been complaining for weeks about a recurring, intermittent electronic glitch in his car. The infotainment screen would randomly reboot, and occasionally the car would go into a limp mode for a few seconds before correcting itself. 3 different dealerships had failed to diagnose it because the problem was so sporadic. It was the perfect bait. I explained the situation to Mark, not all the details, just that I needed to set a trap for a shady mechanic. He was intrigued and readily agreed to help. The following Saturday, I drove Mark's Audi over to Ethan's garage. Ethan's eyes lit up when he saw the car pull in. A high-end German import meant a high-end repair bill. "Hey Jesse, what's this?" he said, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Hey Ethan," I said, forcing a friendly smile. "This is my friend Mark's car. He's been having some weird electrical issues with it and the dealerships are clueless. I told him my brother-in-law was the best independent mechanic in the city and could probably figure it out." I laid the flattery on thick and he puffed up his chest, soaking it in. "Yeah, those dealership guys are mostly just kids reading from a computer," he boasted. "Leave it with me, I'll find the problem." I handed him the keys. Mark said to spare no expense, I added, delivering the kill shot. "He just wants it fixed, he's happy to pay cash." Ethan's greedy smile was all the confirmation I needed. He was hooked. I had him run a preliminary diagnostic right there, and I used my phone to secretly record him saying, "Yeah, this looks like a big one. Probably a faulty wiring harness or a central control module. It's gonna be a complex job, probably a few thousand to sort out." I knew from Mark that the online forums for this specific issue pointed to a simple, inexpensive fix. A faulty ground cable that cost less than $50 to replace. Phase 3, setting the stage. I needed a venue for the final confrontation. It had to be a place where Ethan would feel comfortable and off guard, a family setting. A few days later, I called my mom and asked her to organize a family dinner at my house the following weekend. I told her I wanted to clear the air, that things had felt tense lately, and I wanted to get everyone together. She was delighted and immediately agreed. The invitations went out. My parents, Olivia, and of course, the guest of honor, Ethan. Phase 4, the final piece. 2 days before the scheduled dinner, I received an email. The subject line was, "Ray your application with Viridian Dynamics." It was from Sarah Jenkins, one of the department heads who was supposed to have been on my interview panel. My hands trembled as I opened it. She wrote that Ms. Albright had forwarded her my email and the mechanic's report. She said that in her 20 years in the industry, she had never encountered a situation like it. She was appalled at what had happened but also incredibly impressed by my professionalism and candor. She informed me that they had already offered the senior data strategist position to another candidate. My heart sank, but then I read the next sentence. However, she wrote, your qualifications combined with the extraordinary circumstances have prompted us to create a new parallel role in my department, lead analyst, special projects. It carries the same salary and responsibilities. The job is yours if you want it. No further interview required. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. I hadn't just gotten the job back, I had earned it through the very act of responding to the crisis. I took the job. I accepted the offer right then and there, but I told no one. This victory was a secret, the final weapon in my arsenal. The engine of my revenge was fully built, tuned, and ready to be fired. All that was left was to turn the key. The night of the dinner arrived, cloaked in a deceptive calm. I spent the afternoon cooking, preparing a roast chicken dinner, a meal that was both a family favorite and a symbol of normalcy, of tradition. It was the perfect stage dressing for the drama I had planned. My parents arrived first, cheer. Full and oblivious, bringing a bottle of wine. Then Olivia and Ethan walked through the door. Olivia gave me a warm hug, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew things were strained between her husband and me. Ethan, on the other hand, was the picture of confidence. He clapped me on the shoulder, a wide, false grin on his face. Smells great in here, Jesse, trying to show us up in the kitchen now too. His arrogance was boundless. He felt untouchable. He assumed my silence over the past week was a sign of defeat, that I had simply accepted my bad luck and moved on. He had no idea he was a fly walking into a spider's web. We made small talk through drinks and appetizers. I asked Ethan how work was going. He launched into a lengthy, exaggerated story about the challenges of fixing my friend Mark's Audi. It's a real beast, that one, he declared, sipping his beer. The whole central computer is fried. I had to special order a part from Germany. It's gonna be a $5,000 job at least. Good thing your friend has deep pockets. My parents looked impressed. Olivia looked proud of her husband's expertise. I just nodded, my expression neutral, adding another log to the pyre I was building for him. We sat down for dinner, and for an hour, everything was sickeningly normal. We talked about the weather, my parents' upcoming vacation, Olivia's work at the library. I played the part of the gracious host, refilling wine glasses and passing dishes. I watched Ethan laugh and joke, completely at ease, and I felt a profound, chilling calm. He was eating my food in my house after having stood in my driveway and methodically dismantled my future. The disrespect was staggering. Finally, dessert was served. I brought out a cheesecake and coffee, and as everyone took their first bites, I cleared my throat. I'm really glad everyone could come tonight, I began, my voice even. I wanted to get us all together because, as some of you know, I had a pretty rough start to last week. I saw Olivia's expression soften with sympathy. Ethan's face remained a mask of nonchalant curiosity. I had that final interview at Viridian, I continued, the one I was so excited about, but I never made it. My car wouldn't start. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry, my mom said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. That's just terrible luck. That's the thing, I said, looking directly at Ethan. It wasn't luck. I let the words hang in the air. The mood in the room shifted instantly. The cheerful chatter died. Ethan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I had the car towed to a garage, I explained. And the mechanic gave me some interesting news. He said my fuel line had been cleanly cut and a critical sensor had been unplugged. He said it wasn't a breakdown, it was sabotage. A collective gasp went through the room. Sabotage, my dad asked, bewildered. Who on earth would do that? Ethan finally spoke, his voice dripping with false concern. That's awful, Jesse. Do you have any idea who it could have been? You should file a police report. He was a talented actor. I had to give him that. I've been thinking a lot about who might have the skills to do something like that, I said, my gaze still locked on him. Someone who knows their way around an engine. Someone who can disable a car without leaving a trace. I paused, then turned the knife. Someone who can, for instance, diagnose a $50 faulty ground cable on an Audi and decide to call it a $5,000 fried computer module. Ethan's face went pale, the confident smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. What are you talking about? He stammered. Oh, come on, Ethan, I said, my voice dropping, losing its friendly edge. Let's stop playing games. Jesse, what are you doing? Olivia pleaded, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Why are you attacking him? I'm not attacking him, Liv, I said softly. I'm just presenting the data. I picked up the TV remote from the side table. I think it's time everyone saw the evidence for themselves. I turned on the large flat-screen television mounted on the living room wall. I had already queued up the file. With a single click, Arthur Vance's security footage filled the screen. The room was plunged into a dead, horrified silence, broken only by the ambient noise from the video. We all watched the grainy, black-and-white footage of the hooded figure walking up my driveway. We watched him crouch by my car. We watched him stand, look around, and then turn his head just as my porch light illuminated his profile. Olivia let out a choked sob. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filled with tears. My father stared at the screen, his face a thunderous mask of disbelief and rage. Ethan looked like he had been turned to stone. His face was as white as a sheet, his jaw slack with shock. The video loop started again, playing his betrayal on repeat. It's fake, Ethan whispered, his voice. Horse, that's not me, it's edited. Jesse, you did this. Don't you dare, my father boomed, his voice shaking with fury. He stood up, pointing a trembling finger at Ethan. Don't you dare lie to our faces, we saw you. The dam broke, Ethan started shouting, a torrent of desperate denials. Olivia was openly weeping, looking back and forth between her husband and her twin brother, her world collapsing around her. In the midst of the chaos, I stood up, calm and collected. It's over, Ethan, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. I have this video, I have the mechanic's report. I have a recording of you admitting you were going to defraud my friend for thousands of dollars, and I have a new job. Veridian was so impressed with how I handled this that they created a new position for me. You failed. Your pathetic, jealous little plan failed completely. I let that sink in, then I delivered the final blow. So here's what's going to happen. I have a police report ready to be filed for property destruction and a complaint ready for the Bureau of Automotive Repair for fraud. Or you can sign over your half of Grandma's old cottage to me, write me a check for the car repairs and my friend's fraudulent diagnostic fee, and you and I will never speak again. The choice is yours, but you'll make it right now. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation was pure chaos. Ethan, cornered and exposed, cycled through a desperate flurry of emotions, denial, rage, pleading. He tried to claim the video was a deepfake, that I was setting him up. But the raw, unedited footage, combined with the context of his lies about the Audi, left no room for doubt. My father, a man I had rarely seen lose his temper, told Ethan to get out of my house before he did something he would regret. Olivia was the most tragic figure in the room. She was completely shattered, caught in an impossible position between the brother she adored and the husband she thought she knew. She looked at me, her eyes begging me to take it back, to say it was all some horrible mistake. I just looked at her sadly and shook my head. She left with Ethan, their departure shrouded in a heavy, toxic silence that felt like the end of something permanent. My parents stayed for another hour trying to comfort me, but we all knew the family unit had been fractured, perhaps irrevocably. The next few days were tense. I expected a fight, perhaps a counter-accusation from Ethan. Instead, I received a call from a lawyer. Ethan, faced with the undeniable proof and the threat of criminal charges that would not only land him in jail but also destroy his business, had folded completely. The lawyer informed me that his client would agree to my terms. Within a week, the paperwork was signed. Ethan's half share of the small lake cottage we had co-inherited from our grandmother was now legally mine. A cashier's check for the exact amount of my car repairs, plus the $500 he had charged for the sham diagnostic on the Audi, arrived via courier. He had complied with every demand. It wasn't a victory that brought joy, but a grim, necessary accounting. A few days after the legal matters were settled, Olivia called me. Her voice was thin and broken. "How could you do that to us, Jesse?" she whispered, the words laced with pain. "In front of everyone, you humiliated him." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Liv, he tried to ruin my life. He didn't just damage my car, he attacked my future, everything I've worked for. What was I supposed to do? Pretend it didn't happen?" "You could have talked to him privately," she cried. "And what would that have accomplished?" I asked, my voice firm but not unkind. "He would have lied just like he lied to your face about the Audi. He needed to be exposed. Sometimes the only way to deal with a rot is to cut it out completely." We talked for nearly an hour, but it felt like we were speaking different languages. She was trying to salvage her marriage. I was trying to protect myself from the man who had betrayed us both. I ended the call by telling her I loved her and I always would, but I could not and would not have Ethan in my life ever again. I told her she would eventually have to make a choice, but that choice was hers alone. The following weeks were about building my new life. I started my job at Veridian Dynamics. The work was even more challenging and rewarding than I had imagined. Sarah Jenkins, my new boss, became a mentor. She respected my skills and my resilience. I felt valued and seen in a way I never had before. I was working with a team of brilliant people on projects that genuinely excited me. The failure Ethan had engineered for me had, through a strange twist of fate, led to the greatest success of my career. I sold the cottage. With the proceeds from the sale and the significant signing bonus from my new job, I had more than enough for a down payment on a small house in a vibrant neighborhood close. To the city, I sold my old, repaired sedan and bought a new, reliable car. Every step was a deliberate move away from the person I had been, the person who could be victimized. 6 months passed. I hadn't spoken to Olivia since that painful phone call. Then one afternoon, a letter with her handwriting arrived at my new address. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. It was short, only a few paragraphs. She wrote that she had left Ethan. The revelation of what he had done and his complete lack of true remorse had slowly eroded everything she thought their marriage was built on. She had filed for divorce. She was living in a small apartment and working at a different library branch. She wrote that she was sorry for not seeing his jealousy, sorry for defending him, and sorry for the distance between us. The last line read, "I know it will take time, but I hope one day I can earn my brother back." I folded the letter and walked over to the large window in my new home office. I looked out at the city skyline, a view I had earned. The wreckage of my old life had finally been cleared. Justice had been served, a new future had been built, and the first tentative bridge back to my sister had been extended. There were still scars, but for the first time in a long time, the path forward was clear, open, and entirely my own.